Hola, my people. Welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday. That is right. You've come to the right place. If you're looking to understand a little bit more about powerlifting technique, that's what we're here to do. You can go ahead and submit your own lifts for Form Check Friday. Go ahead and click the annotation on screen for a guideline on how to do that, and you could be chosen. You could be one of the chosen ones. Anyways, we're going to get into it here. So, up first, we have George. He was our last submission last week, so we left him hanging. You know, we left him out to the community to hopefully give some good constructive criticism. I know I saw some good stuff in those comments, so thank you to everybody who chimes in and you know, trying to make each other better. It's really good to see in a community. So for those of you who are just tuning in, George has been training for over a year. He says he put on 40 pounds. I'm not sure if he means gained 40 pounds of body weight or put 40 pounds on his squat, but he says that he does struggle with the squat. That's kind of his biggest struggle. He says he's tried low bar and high bar, that he's a tall person and his back tends to give out before his legs. So I think there's a few reasons I can see why that might be the case here, George. So number one, you're super flexible. This is a very deep squat. And when we get that deep, we're going into a fair bit of looseness in the sort of lower back and pelvis region. So I think we need to do a lot of work on bracing, George. I want you to think more about filling this belt up, more about making this trunk rigid, and try not to, don't allow it to get out of position. Don't allow yourself to, give up position into the bottom for the sake of depth. You have a ton of depth, my man. You don't have to worry about squatting deeper, right? There's depth. Top of the knee, top of the crease of the hip, there's depth. However, we go 4 inches below depth, and in order to get here, we round out here. Now, if we watch what happens when we push back up, we're not really able to regain that braced tight position in the trunk. So we need to be way more tight in the squat, right? Way more tight. So think more about pushing your butt back. Think more about creating a bit of an angle with your trunk, and just kind of dip to depth as opposed to going until you bounce off of the floor. I mean, it's great. It's really good to see that you can get a huge range of motion, right? That tells me that your stance width and toe angle and a lot of that kind of stuff is probably really great. But we can see, especially on this last rep, what happens in the bottom, right? So we come down, we're in a decent position, we hit depth, we go 4 inches lower. By the time we try to drive up from there, that's such a disadvantaged position. I mean, if you were an Olympic lifter and you were catching a clean here, hell yeah. But if you're trying to maximize your back squat, you're probably going to want to learn to be tighter to cut depth. Yeah, I mean, that's mostly going to be what I recommend doing. So hopefully that helps you, man. Best of luck with, busting through that plateau. All right. This is Hakim. He says he's been training for about 6 years, 4 years seriously. He says he has a lot of discomfort in his left pec, and he seems like it's pretty hit or miss with his technique. So we went over this last video. We're going to do it again today, folks. So the number one reason that we've seen in the literature that people get pain and injuries when it comes to lifting or training, really, is doing too much. And we can see, Hakim, that that's a 10 RPE, right? That is an absolute max. We're not getting another rep in there. Leave more reps in the tank, people. Leave reps in the tank. Say it with me. Leave reps in the tank. This is how we train with consistent technique. This is how we accumulate long-term training stress, and training stress is a good thing. We need to stress the body for it to adapt, for us to get stronger. This is how we go on for long, hopefully good or strong, productive careers as lifters, is by leaving reps in the tank. Understand the RPE concept. We've got a video coming out on it. Might be out by now. Depends when this video airs, but don't quote me on that. Try to understand the RPE concept. Look it up. We've got some videos on our channel. There's tons of resources, but like 7 to 9 RPE, that's fine. We very, very rarely want to be going to a 10 RPE in training. So when we go to a 10, often our technique is going to do basically whatever it needs to do for the bar to get up. So you see here, we got really loose on the chest. The bar kind of rolled out here. The shoulders moved. We had to kind of catch the bar and then slowly get it going to get it back in the rack. We just don't need to be training that intensely. It doesn't need to happen. You don't need to train with a 10 RPE to get stronger. All right, now that I'm off my soapbox, let's take a look at the actual technique here. So, number one, we're over tucked, right? So the elbows are very far in front of the bar, and a lot of the times that means that when we go to press, let's see here, we have a pretty pronounced flare, which isn't a bad thing. But if the elbows remain too tucked, what's going to happen is we're going to get this really sort of choppy pressing pattern, because we're not able to get the elbows back into a decent position to press the bar back over our face, back over our shoulders. So over tucked in the bottom, let's work on getting those elbows out. Number two, very loose to the chest, right? We're controlled to about here, and then the bar just free falls into your torso. We need more control to the chest, right? Generally speaking, I would say most of my trainees, especially newer lifters who are struggling with consistency, I'm going to coach them to touch lighter, right? Have more control when that bar is on your chest, or at the very least, introduce an accessory or special accessory like development exercise. The classifications are escaping me right now. Anyways, introduce a secondary exercise where you can use a light touch to focus on how you should feel, how you should move, how to load things up into that bottom position. If you find you're stronger with this kind of like dump and heave press, then by all means do that for your like comp bench. But it's gonna be useful to use maybe a bit of a tempo, maybe a bit of a lighter touch, even as secondary exercises to figure out how to bench better, because we need a lighter touch. We need more consistency at the very least. So those would be my recommendations, man. All right, Wayne, let's take a look at these deadlifts, Wayne. So sumo deadlift, 140 for triple at 8. He says he's struggling to progress further. He says he feels good, but it looks like he's losing it and kind of rounding, he says, and he has the same issues sumo and conventional. All right, so first off, we're very extended here. We probably don't need to be quite as extended. Most of the time what happens when we overextend, that's not hurting ourselves, it's not blowing our backs out, it's that we're gonna end up changing position. Right? If we kind of overcompensate one way, often what'll happen is whoop, we go back to the other way. Now the ideal is that you go from this overextended position to like a nice neutral strong position where you're able to basically brace the trunk without it moving any further. But what actually happens is we go from this extended position into a flex position. So part of me would say, actually, if you want to have less flexion, start a little bit more flexed. That's a hot take for you. The other thing, we need to find some tension in this bottom position. Right now, you're just sitting down, you're like wiggling your feet around. We're not tight. We're not tense. I want you to start with your butt like way up here. Then I want you to think about setting your lats, and then I want you to pull your hips down into position very slowly and intentionally while trying to keep this at the same level without going into this overextension, right? A little more ribs down in the front to create like a nice sort of flat torso. Yeah, because as soon as we go to pull, just like all of those things that were set weird kind of fall apart, right? So this is actually a decent position. If you could pull yourself into this position with a lot of tightness, this is a fine position to maintain throughout the deadlift. But what happens is it gets worse because we're not actually training that position. We're trying to train this position, but that super extended position just, it ain't happening. So we end up, again, yanking into the bar without setting any tension into it. We've got some good videos. Again, I'm going to bring up JP Couchy. That's 2 weeks in a row. Guys got some good stuff. Go check it out. But JP Couchy has also got some stuff on pulling the slack out of the bar, which I think is a very, 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 very important concept for deadlifts. So definitely try to learn how to pull the slack out of the bar. Now, once we can pull the slack out of the bar, we can start from this position as opposed to just sort of slamming into the bar and hoping for the best. Another thing, and I'm not trying to pick on you here, man. I'm trying to help you. Let's try this grip a little wider, right? Right now it feels like we're really crowded in, and when we're crowded in like that, it's really hard to get the shoulders in a good position. However, if we move the grip out a little bit, we can get the shoulders into a way better position. And it doesn't mean retracted, it doesn't mean pulling them back, it just means pulling them down and not being so far forward with the shoulders, right? I find anecdotally that for myself and a lot of my trainees, if you can widen your grip a little bit, a lot of the times you'll get a lot better sort of upper back feel in the deadlift, right? You'll get a little bit more feeling like the lats are kind of digging in and grounding and becoming a part of your bracing. So yeah, I would definitely recommend playing with a bit of a wider grip in order to help set the upper back. I would play with learning to pull the slack out of the bar and being a lot more patient off the floor. Slow things down. All told, you don't have bad deadlift mechanics. Yeah, I wouldn't like, you're not gonna just hurt yourself because you're doing it so bad. You're going to Snap City or whatever the heck crazy stuff people say. That's just not kind of how these things work. But yeah, take your time, try to learn how to pull the slack out of the bar, and I think it'll go a long ways for you, Wayne. Hopefully that helps, man. All right, this is Sean. Sean has been lifting for 9 years. Says he can't figure out how to keep his upper back tight. He's not getting the depth that he wants as well. So 85% here, and he's been squatting a low bar for 2 months. So your depth, I think, actually looks fine. I don't know. What do y'all think out there? Are we at depth? I know Dylan's the one that's hard to convince, but Dylan ain't here right now, so I'm gonna say your depth is good. All right. So number one, I think your low bar position maybe needs to be a little bit higher or lower. Right now, it looks like it's resting on. So if we look at the shoulder, a lot of the times we kind of have the bulk of the rear delt, and then we have this little spot kind of like right on or at the bottom of the rear delt. And it looks to me like the bar is kind of on here as opposed to in that slot. So what I would do is I would play with your bar position first and foremost. Maybe lower, maybe higher. But the next thing I would do is it looks like you're a bit shrugged up with your shoulders, right? So I think we should try to get more depression. Try to pull those shoulders down more. And that might mean like, that looks really friggin' low. Looks like there's a pretty big gap between the sort of pins here, which is unfortunate. But maybe there's another rack around. I don't know. Maybe you could put that bar a tiny little bit lower so you're not having to shrug up into it, and you're able to start with a little bit of a lower bar position, or a little bit of a lower shoulder blade position rather, to create more tightness. Now the other thing, when I watch this video, is that yeah, just generally speaking out of the rack, we're kind of shrugged up and hunched over. I would try to coach you to open that up, like drive the chest up a little bit. I don't necessarily want to see too much change in the back because this part looks okay. But what I do want to see is try and get a little bit of thoracic extension, people would call it. I'm not sure that the thoracic spine is like the most mobile thing, or that for the most part, a lot of thoracic extension is really even possible. But yeah, we do want to see a little bit more of an upright angle in that upper back, right? Because I think right now the bar's in a weird position. So if you get more upright, it's going to fall. So because the bar's in a weird position, you're hunched over to give it something to rest on. If you can find the right bar position and kind of bunch up those muscles of your upper back better by pulling the shoulder blades back and down, then you're going to be able to find a better bar position. Then you're going to be able to get more upright with your chest. And chest up is a cue that I rarely use, but I would say that that's kind of what I'm looking for here. So yeah, man. And in terms of depth, I don't think your depth is that bad. I think it feels weird because your upper back's doing some weird things, which is just kind of throwing you off overall. Alrighty, this is Alex. Alex doing some bench. He says he's 20, started powerlifting 4 weeks ago, and he's doing, get this, Smolov Jr. and Smolov at the same time. And his bench is stalling out. He says it worked pretty darn well to this point, but it's starting to stall out. So there's a couple things. Number one, yes, it could be too much overall work. Could be. It also could be that, we're just kind of running into some of that, what's the word? Repeated bout effect. Thank you, brain. But basically, if we do the same thing in perpetuity, we're not going to continue to adapt. And sometimes that is on a larger scale where it's like we might need to mix up the programming, right? Maybe it worked super well the first time and we kind of are just not adapting to it, the same layout, the same exercises, the same loading schemes anymore. So that's going to be my programming advice, is maybe play around with that, right? That would be the first place I would start if we're not making progress. Now, the technique department, there were a few things that I noticed here. So number one, the unrack is quite high. The shoulders are quite high when we unrack, and we start our press quite high. So also, this thumb, do not do that. Get that thumb around the bar. Please, 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 especially with no safeties, get that thumb around the bar. Even if it's just kind of like loosely there, because we do want that bar low in the palm. And that's why people like that suicide grip, is because it puts the bar low in the palm. The bench feels good, but keep it low in the palm. Just wrap that thumb around it. Please, please, please wrap your thumb around. It can make a really big difference in the likelihood of that bar popping out of there and giving you a really bad day. And I don't want to see that happen. Anyways, now, so what I would do is I'd set your bench a little bit further in the rack. Right now you're unracking from what, like eye level? Unrack from like your nose mouth level, lined up with the bar when you're underneath. That way you're not having to reach your shoulder blades up as high, right? Right here. Shoulder blades, look at how much elevation we get as you unrack, right? And or grab this guy here and be like, yo dude, you gonna give me a hand off? Get him back here. He can, put his hands on the bar like that, and he can help you out with that bar. You like that stick figure or what? All right. So do that, and then when you unrack, I want you to just keep this bar going out this way. And as you do so, keep these shoulder blades going down. Right now we're pressing from like here to here. What I want you to do is press from here to here. Now we can maybe see, the difference in the range of motion, right? A little bit longer range of motion, a little bit shorter range of motion. Lower touch point, higher touch point. And in most cases, that's gonna be a little bit more comfortable on the shoulder, and we're gonna be able to get that shoulder blade down, which generally is gonna help tighten the upper back and have a lot of other good impacts on our bench overall. So you can see before you even go to press it, you have to kind of bring it down. Now, if you had started that bar from right here, it would just be kind of more straight down as opposed to like this, and then you got to press it back, right? Elbows are good, press is pretty good, but again, we press way the heck back out here. Shoulder blades pop back out of position. So there's a lot of shoulder blade movement, elevation, depression, more depression. We need more depression. Pull those shoulder blades down, my man. Other than that, your touches are nice. Your bar path is good, other than it goes too far back. And overall, I think a pretty solid bench, but a few things that we could probably work on there. All right, now we have Uriel. So Uriel says he's been doing mostly bodybuilding stuff. He's started doing some powerlifting now, and this is his sumo deadlift at 185 pounds. So he says that he feels it mostly in his lower back, and he feels like his form is holding him back. So we're gonna let this play through, and I want everybody to head down in the comment section below and help our boy Uriel out. Give him some constructive feedback and criticisms in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Hit a thumbs up if you liked it. Make sure to stay tuned for next week's Form Check Friday and come by our live streams, twitch.tv/Calgary Barbell, every Friday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. We'll see you there, and bye-bye.